7:34. So it's 7:34. So why don't we get started? So welcome everyone to the November 17th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Board for the town of Ossining. And I'd like to start with introductions of the consultants, staff, and the board. And I'll just go in the order that they are on my screen. So Sandy.
Andy and Nellie, secretary.
Margaret.
Margaret Kahn, secretary.
Valerie.
Valerie Menasher, town planner.
Jim.
Jim Bosinas, planning board member.
Donna.
Donna Sharrett, planning board member.
Carolyn.
Carolyn Stevens, planning board member.
Dan.
Nancy Arcia, consulting engineer of the planning board.
And Kathy.
Kathy Salantis, planning board attorney.
And I'm Gareth Huffam, planning board chair. Did I miss anyone? Jesus was going to try to connect to the link. He tried to get to the meeting, but not yet. Okay, hopefully he'll be able to join us. So the first item on our agenda tonight is the Armstrong Plumbing and Heating, 593 North State Road. Is the applicant present?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Tom.
Hello.
So tonight we're going to open the public hearing. Can I have a motion from the board to open the public hearing?
So move.
Second?
A second.
And how do you vote, Donna?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Tom Kerrigan, would you like to start with any presentation?
Yes. So let me share my screen here. Is that an option? I don't see it.
I don't see it.
Okay. Well, since this project was last before this board, oh, here we go. Okay, here we go. So since this project was last before the board, we made some changes, per the board's comments. We made some changes to the drainage because we went from a asphalt parking lot to a gravel parking lot, and there was some concern that there'd be some extra runoff, sediment in the runoff. So we increased the sump. That paired with the proposed downstream defender unit should adequately cover any sediment concerns. And we received comments on the landscape plan, which we went back and the landscape architect reviewed those comments and made changes as he felt was appropriate to address those concerns. Those are really the only changes. There was only 3 submitted plans in this submission. This is the detail sheet showing the change to the sump in that drain inlet in the driveway, but those were the only changes since the last time we submitted.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from the board or consultants? Let's start with the consultants.
I have no comments at this point.
Yeah, and I've taken a look at it, and the comments I had on the changes have been addressed. So at this point, we're okay with the plan.
Okay, great. Anyone on the board want to speak to it?
Well, I just have a couple comments. One is I think they did a great job on the landscape plan. My comment would be, I guess it's a question for Valerie, because they did say they're going to remove the bamboo. So I didn't know if that needs to be on the resolution, and it should be like a permanent, not just, they're not going to just remove it once, because bamboo isn't that kind of plant. It has to be like an ongoing effort until, you know, over a few years until it's eradicated. So I don't know if that could be addressed amended on the resolution.
Or we can have it as a condition of approval, the removal of the bamboo.
Okay, so and that indicates that it's going to be on like a eradication, right?
Tom, would you agree to that?
I think, you know, within reason, there is bamboo on adjacent properties. So, you know, it's got to be understood that we're not responsible for what their bamboo is. So, you know, it's within the realm of this project, yes.
So I didn't see it on your immediate neighbor's property or across the street. That's knotweed across the street. That's
so it's on the property to the north, which actually isn't in Austining. I think it's in Briarcliff. That's
it is on their property.
Yeah, they have adjacent to their house. It's to the north. It's almost directly next to that house. But it's not on, in that area. It's not on this property. So as long as it's understood that there's a certain extent to which we can remove bamboo before we're crossing a property.
Got it. Yeah. So I definitely, I think it's great if you remove what you have, and then hopefully with all that fantastic planting that you have there, you'll shade it out because it doesn't like shade. So, you know, maybe you'll end up winning that way. So, but thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So the condition would be then to just the removal of the bamboo, correct?
That sounds like all we can ask for if it's on the neighbor's immediate property. Hopefully they would remove theirs, but that's a big ask. The other comment I would have is that you did list viburnum dentatum, which is the viburnum shrubs. So I'm fine with the plan, and I would, you know, but I just feel like since I know something about that plant, I should just tell you, because you're going to be buying 10 of them. In this area, there's an insect that eats them, so I had to get rid of it on my property because it completely killed it, and T-Town had to get rid of theirs. And so it might be better, like maybe, you know, if you would consider it, maybe we could just make something in the resolution or something so that it can be approved tonight, that you would choose something like Ilex verticulata, which is winterberry, or spicebush, which is Lindera benzoin. So those two things would grow also there because it's shady and wet, and they're deer resistant, and they don't today.
What was the second one you? What was the second one you said?
It's spicebush, but the garden centers call a lot of things that. So it's, you'd have to use the Latin. It's Lindera, Lindera, benzoin, benzoin. So okay. Either of those would work in that area. So
okay. I'll do our Wednesday work about that.
Yeah, so I just want you to have that option, because I know the garden centers sell that plant, but I think that's they're selling it, and then when it dies, you go buy something else. So it's sort of a win-win for them. I don't know why they sell it here. I really don't. But anyway, so if we could give the applicant that option, I think that would be fair, so they're not throwing their money away. That's it for me.
So we want to, just for clarification, we want to allow for the applicant to exchange species of plants?
If they choose to, yes, on that one viburnum. So it's the Ilex verticulata or the Lindera benzoin would be good choices.
We could add a note to the plan, to the landscape plan, to indicate that those would be appropriate substitutes for the viburnum, if that makes it easier.
Okay,
yeah,
I just don't
why
want
don't we
you to
do
have
that?
to, okay, that's good. Okay, but we could still vote on it tonight, right? Yeah. Okay. That's it for me.
Anyone else? Jim, Carolyn?
If we don't have someone from the community, I'm ready to move forward.
Okay, Carolyn?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone from the community who would like to speak to this application? This is a public hearing. I guess you have to raise your hand somehow, and Sandy will recognize you. Do we have anyone, Sandy? Sandy, do we have anyone?
I don't see anybody that wants to talk on this project.
Okay, so not seeing anyone from the community who would like to speak to this. And if there are no further comments from the consultants or the board, then we could entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
And how do you vote, Jim?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And then I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So thank you very much, Tom. I think you're off and running.
Great. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The second item on the agenda tonight is the River Knoll development at 40 Croton Dam Road. And it's the purpose of this evening is to submit back to the applicant any comments that we had on their submission of the supplementary draft environmental impact statement. And we have comments that were collected and submitted by Valerie, which includes not only the consultants' comments, but also the comments that the board made at the last meeting. And in addition to that, we have submission from the traffic engineer that we hired to review the completeness of their traffic section. So we will not be taking comments tonight from the applicant. What we would like to do is present our comments and adopt the comments, or adopt them, I should say, as a board, adopt them, and then ask that the applicant review them at their leisure and reply to them in the form of a revised SDIS, or if they have issues with the comments, to reply by in writing. I understand that you got the final copies of these comments and the memo just this afternoon. So I think it's much better if we don't ask you to shoot from the hip without having had time to fully digest the comments, and rather we'll leave that for another meeting after you've had time to review it carefully and respond in writing. So with that, I'd like to ask our consultants, Valerie, maybe starting with you, to review what we have.
Okay, so I think at the last meeting, we went through in detail, comment by comment. I think in terms of this meeting, I just wanted to highlight some additional information or additional comments that were added. And they specifically dealt with concerns with the sidewalks, as well as the pedestrian thoroughfares and access and emergency exits. There were additional comments asked about the retaining walls, the heights, as well as the sections of the walls, specifically questions on stormwater, just making sure about the confirmation on where the maps are located, also vegetation, specifically looking at buffers and the locations of like landscaping and visual impacts. We also added some additional comments focused on demolition of the old buildings and dust and mitigation, as well as dust monitoring and also hours of construction. And then we also added some additional comments dealing with the alternatives and the wetlands, and then also specifically focusing on views and the view sheds. So those were the additional comments from the board in addition to what I reviewed last time. And I believe all comments are actually posted on the website. And the traffic consultants had some comments on some additional information that it's needed in order for it to be complete for the scope. You're muted, Gareth.
Whoops. Kathy?
I have nothing further to add to that summary that Valerie did. I mean, tonight you just may want to adopt those comments and determine that the SDEIS that was submitted is not complete.
Okay. Before we do that, Dan, do you have thoughts on this?
Well, we had done a thorough review on the prior application. So at that point, we had concluded that the water supply and sewer lines were sufficient to handle that larger development. So with the scaled down projects, you know, we have to conclude that that would still be the case. They did prepare a SWIP for the other project, and we do have a SWIP for this one. In terms of everything that should be in the SWIP, it's in there. I would say the document is complete, but we haven't, you know, done the thorough review that we would do when the project's in its final form. But the issue is that they've demonstrated that they've reduced their peak flows significantly from the pre-development flows. So even if there's some minor adjustments to it, it appears they've demonstrated that the stormwater practices they're proposing are sufficient to mitigate the impact.
Okay, great. Comments from the board?
So I have a couple comments. I just had two comments on Valerie on your document. Just questions on page 3 of 10. The second bullet says define substantially buffered. So my concern is rather than just a definition, it would be they're also going to illustrate that, correct? Would that
so in that was specifically dealing with a sentence that said substantially buffered. We did ask for additional information on the landscaping plans as well. So that will be visually noted with landscaping plans as well.
Great. Okay. And then I had on page 4, this last one for your document, chapter 2, bullet 3. I just wanted to make sure that they're going to be demonstrating how the project meets the sustainability goals of the comprehensive plan. Do you have that somewhere else?
So we're asking the applicant to provide how it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, specifically the new comprehensive plan. So once we get a response from the applicant on that, if there needs to be additional information, we can raise it at that time.
Okay, great. Okay, because I didn't see much of that. It didn't pop out to me. So the other thing that I would this is not about your document, but the things that I just wanted to bring out that I didn't, and I think you all, Valerie, you had this in there that all the lighting, that they should have a lighting plan, because I didn't see any street lights, you know, which would be on Croton Dam Road, but I'm also really interested to see if they're going to have lighting on those, not only the interior roads in Croton Dam, but the emergency access roads, like what lights they would have on theirs, because it stands to reason that they would have some lights if they had an emergency. So I'd want to see that, but you did ask for a lighting plan, correct? So yeah, okay. And then the other thing of concern that I've been looking at this week was the that emergency access road onto Narragansett. Looks like it's just like straight downhill, and there's a big retaining wall. So I'm wondering how the water that would come during any big rain event, sheeting off of that down slope that ends right at Narragansett, which is a low point, like how they're managing that stormwater. So if that's included, I'm fine with it, but I definitely am concerned about that potential of flooding on Narragansett Road and those houses there.
So I think that would be, you know, wrapped up into the stormwater. And I'll turn it over to Dan to kind of explain what's required when you're looking at stormwater peak runoff.
Okay.
Dan, did you want to just sort of explain to Donna? Dan, you're muted.
There is an existing drain line that runs along the back there. You know, I'm just going to look at the numbers here to let's see. So that design point 2, which is that area you're talking about, and the drain line, the 1 year, 10 year, and 100-year storm, the peak runoff rates were reduced by 42, 51, and 54% respectively. So the scenario we're looking at is what they're doing should reduce flooding, and it has to do more with shifting the watersheds, and some of the runoff is going to go to the practices down along Croton Dam Road. But what they're doing should significantly reduce the flooding potential on that side of the project.
But it doesn't seem, it seems like they have a big retaining wall all along that edge of that access road. And then—
Yeah, no, they have a retaining wall, but that water has to be collected and directed into the existing drainage system.
Okay. So somewhere that from that cul-de-sac, they're collecting the water and sending it elsewhere.
Well, it's sort of shifting because you have the you've got the units are backing up to there. So it used to be more water that ran down. I mean, you're focused on where the driveway is, but there was sheet flow coming off the hill all along, you know, heading on down to the village line. So that's significantly reduced based upon the internal drainage systems they're doing and the way that's being directed. So, you know, based upon, you know, going through their numbers, I mean, everything, you know, they did the modeling and everything to make those conclusions. I mean, when we, you know, intuitively, I look at it and I have really no reason to disbelieve them and their analysis. But like I said earlier, you know, we'll do a deep dive to confirm everything, but it's not like they designed this thing and the mitigation just keeps the peak flows at the pre-existing conditions. They're actually reducing them substantially from their existing peak flows. And peak flows is obviously what creates flooding.
Okay, thank you for that. That was a good explanation. Something I didn't understand previously. So my last comment, if I may just ask, I was confused on the traffic completeness report on page 3E. It says, we note that the lead agency's determination of mitigation requirements will be addressed during the substantive review of the DEIS. So that's later? Is that what that means?
That's correct.
Okay. I I just wanted to make sure we were.
That's the next round of comments. Right.
Okay.
Now, once this document is deemed complete and it goes out for public comment, the planning board, as well as the consultants, will do it, as Dan said, a deeper dive into the document, and then we'll raise additional questions or concerns or issues that they would like more information on as part of the FEIS process.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Jim?
My biggest concerns all along have been the density differences between the R15 conforming and the proposed, and then the buffering and screening between the project and the neighbors. So we're probably a little bit, we're not there yet. So I don't have any additional questions at this time.
So I would also mention the screening, which has been mentioned a couple times already. I know it's in the Valerie's document, but I want to emphasize the need for the applicant to show the screening between the development and all of the neighboring properties very carefully. That's one of our biggest concerns. So please take care to do that well. In addition, I want to emphasize the need for a 3D model, which is also mentioned in the document. We've talked about it for a long time, and we haven't seen a 3D digital model yet. I think that this SDEIS cannot be complete without a way for the board and the public to really visualize the project. And given that it is a very three-dimensional site, that would be very critical. And a digital model, 3D model, is not a big deal because we are not asking for architectural details. The buildings can be shown as blocks. If for any reason the applicant is uncomfortable making having a digital 3D model made, you are welcome to have a physical model made like it was done in the olden days out of cardboard and thin slices of wood showing elevation. Whatever your preference, as long as it's a way that the public and the board can really spin it around and look at it from all angles. Also on the plan, I note that the retaining wall is shown as to be designed by others. For this SDIS, I expect at least the height and location of it shown. We don't at this point necessarily need aesthetic details, but we need it to be shown in the three-dimensional representation. Are there any other comments from anyone? If not, we could. I would entertain a motion to adopt the comments from the consultants and the board, and to find that the SDIS as submitted is incomplete.
Also move.
I'll second.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And so I think it's now back in the court of the applicant, and we look forward to hearing from you to set a meeting time for your further submissions.
I would also suggest that any subsequent submission be in red line, so it's clear what changes were made to the document.
Excellent. Thank you for remembering that. I did not. And if nothing else, thank the applicant and the public for coming out for this, and we look forward to more in the future. So the next item on the agenda is the Borrego Solar Energy Storage Facility at 381 North Highland Avenue. Is the applicant present? I see a Greg Gibbons trying to come on.
Yep, I'm here now. Thank you. It disconnected me for a minute. Hello, everybody. Good to see you again.
Hi, Greg. So thank you. We received your plans, and I would like to ask you to walk us through them. They were a little confusing to me. You know, it seems that you're asking for an expansion of what would be approved now, and in addition, identifying an area for future expansion, and there are some other changes as well. So if you could walk us through those, that would be great.
Sure, I will share my screen. I'm also on the call is Karina Solis. She's the project developer. I don't know if she has been given the option to speak, but I would appreciate if she could be given that option. Share my screen here. Okay.
Hi, I think, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Great. Yeah, this is, I'll keep the, well, let me just read through the comments. I sent Valerie a summary email, which hopefully was dispersed to everybody. It had 4 bullet points on the changes that were made. And I'll just walk through those really quickly and try to explain them as I go. First, the biggest thing obviously is the increased system area. We increased the fence area by about 12%. And the width, that's, you know, what you're seeing here is the existing version. And then this is the proposed version. The red are our lease lines and easement lines with the property owner. It's not, apologies if that's a little confusing, but the actual system area increased by about 800 square feet, 880 square feet, my bad, from 6,500 to 2,385. And that is because of this additional requirement for augmentation, which is essentially a fancy word for the batteries run out over time, and the amount of promised power that we can supply to the grid that basically won't be able to be supplied in the future if we don't add additional space for more batteries to be put on essentially this blank pad here. This is a empty concrete pad that they would bring in additional batteries if needed. Obviously that, you know, them installing those would require, I think, you know, some sort of planning board review. But we did want to leave that space open to them in the future. Karina, can you expand on that augmentation a little bit more about why it's needed? Or I don't know if I covered it.
Sure.
Effectively.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So yeah, like Greg said, I am the project developer for this project, giving the promotion of my predecessor, Mike Conway. So yeah, I think Greg just about captured it. A quick explanation of augmentation for energy storage is that it'll address the slow degradation of energy capacity of the battery cells over time. So similar to electronics that we all use every day, like our cell phones or other portable devices, the energy capacity of the battery declines over time with each successive use. So augmentation of the system at a future date aims to calibrate the system back to its original capacity after many years of use. So like Greg said, most of the new area that's identified in our plans for augmentation is actually space reserved for the addition of those new cells once the system has begun to degrade sufficiently from its initial energy capacity to where we would like to bring it back to its starting value. And then I just wanted to note too, so, battery technology offerings are constantly improving. So this augmentation strategy was shared with the team while we were procuring the system for construction after we received our permit. So we're bringing this to the board for consideration, as we feel it'll increase the longevity of this system overall, but also its benefit to the utility grid and to the community.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Karina. So continuing on the area that is changed, basically the old system, it didn't have this little section on it down here. This is the previous one. It would have just the fence is the same width. It just extends into this area. The road hasn't changed. The battery system hasn't changed. It's just we added this extra pad back here, and that pushed some of the equipment up into this area right here. So that that's we can come back to that, but I just want to go on to the next item that we changed or updated, I'll call it. So the next thing is that we designed a stormwater grading area surrounding the system. At the time of approval, the stormwater design and SWIP had not been fully completed or reviewed by Dan Ciarcia. Since that time, we have added a stormwater design. We've done our initial review with Dan. We've talked through that design. He asked us to refine our SWIP a little bit, which we've done, and we've actually sent him another copy of that. We're coordinating a review with Dan right now for that, but he has seen this initial, we'll call it a grading layout. It ended up being a bit larger than we had hoped. It looks scarier than it actually is. It's actually just a 1 foot berm. This yellow line is just a 1 foot berm that allows us to, during storm events, capture some of the water that is, additional water that would be caused by this added impervious of the site in this very shallow pool, we'll call it. And the reason it ended up being so large is that we couldn't go deeper like we would have wanted to make it a smaller area because of that, we'll call it the famous archaeologically sensitive area that we went back and forth on for so long. We have a limit on how deep we can dig on this site to 16 inches. And we don't want to get into that at all costs. So because that area is actually, change my color here, that area is actually right here. And our stormfall outlet, which is existing, this is the existing outfall of the site. There's currently an existing stormwater feature here, which drains down the bank, which is already has its, erosion is happening, but it's that's the spot we want to put our water. We don't want to introduce another spot down this very steep bank for additional water. So we have to keep the amount of water leaving this point the same. All that said, it ends up requiring us to use up a lot more space than we would have wanted to because we can't go deeper, as I said previously. So what we had to do was just berm 1 foot around the whole area. That raises our pad by a foot from what we originally proposed, but it does allow us to get the stormwater storage that we need on this site. And before, what we had shown you, we didn't really have any of that calculated yet. We had hoped, here's this existing stormwater feature. Here's like a swale that essentially runs through the site. And we had intended to bring the water in this direction. And, we didn't misrepresent anything. We just hadn't gotten through all of those calculations and iterations that it took us to figure out a method that worked. So in the end, it does end up looking worse than it is. But like I said, this is just a 1 foot berm. It's going to be grass with landscaping on, which I'll show you for the next change. So the third change is rearrange landscaping around the system area to better coincide with the stormwater grading. The previous design would have proposed plantings within the stormwater detention area rather than around the outside, as currently shown. So previously, we had this planting plan, which had all of these trees planted right in the middle of where our stormwater design now is, which the current design, you know, that area would have been like right through here, which this is the area that's going to have water in it occasionally, flooding, you know, up to the bottom of the plants. Doesn't mean you couldn't maybe grow plants in there, but the better spot would be to plant them along the berm, which is what we're proposing to do. And I'll show you, sorry, I've changed my my representation here. Along the berm, that's this plan right here. So you can see we've shifted the plants to be on top of and along this berm around the outside. It's the same quantities and types of plants, and then, you know, comes up along the outside of the road. I'll go back to what we had before. Before we just, you know, it was kind of an L shape in here. You know, you still have these plants, sorry. But we ended up moving them to be along the berm instead, which is shown in this simulation here. And then lastly, the final thing was just that we rearranged the interconnection equipment at the eastern side of the site. That was a request of the landowner. It's pretty minor. We ended up stacking our interconnection equipment as shown here compared to here we had it kind of elongated along the side of the road. The landowner has some trailers that they keep back here that they use for, they said, camping equipment, all sorts of, for the school. They store things back here, and these would have been in the way. So instead, we moved them along the side of this building that's back here. We moved them, you know, within this threshold so that they can still actually access this area behind this garage. To us, it's a relatively minor change. So that would summarize all of the 4 changes that we're proposing. And at this point, we can, you know, open it back up to questions and, you know, comments.
Thank you, Greg. Any comments from our consultants?
So in terms of process, because one of the things that the board's going to need to, or we're going to need to, the board's going to need to undertake, similar to what you did with 39 Stormingtown Road, is do a comparison, a seeker comparison to the environmental impacts that were, you know, basically you had certain thresholds set in terms of providing your negative declaration, and the applicant will need to provide us additional information as to the increase or decrease of those various environmental impacts. And then ultimately we'll either need to recertify, you know, the board will need to undertake another negative declaration, or just certify that indeed the new project will not exceed those thresholds as identified through the first seeker process.
Okay. Kathy?
I have nothing further to add to what Valerie said. I think just listening to the presentation, one of the issues that the board was concerned about in the secret process and was addressed before it issued its neg deck was the impacts on archaeological acts. And if this is disturbing more area, I would like the applicant to address that.
Dan?
Yeah, the original proposal, we did have some concerns about how the stormwater was being handled. So the applicant's sort of taken this to the next level now, and it looks like we have a stormwater proposal here that will mitigate the impact. So this would be at the stage now where we'll do a deep dive into their SWIP, and hopefully if everything checks out, we'll be willing to sign off on accepting that SWIP.
Comments from the board?
So I have two questions, mainly with the stormwater retention area. That's built to handle what amount of rainfall, like an inch or 2 inches? Like what is that built to handle, that size?
Well, I believe it's the 25-year storm. I'd have to double check what our SWIP actually says on that.
Okay. So my second question is, so you said you're going to plant something in that stormwater area, or is it going to be grass? Like what is
it's going to be? It's going to be grass. Yeah, it'll be grass. But then what we had showed before previously, the plantings would have been in that stormwater area.
No, I totally get that. Yeah, I just didn't.
Okay, so no, there won't be anything planted besides grass, which it currently is grass. So
and then who's going to maintain it? Or how are you going to maintain it? Is like once a year, or is it more than that, or like how are you going to maintain that?
We pay. We have operations and maintenance people that come in. I think it would be all the same as what was approved previously. I believe it was that we agreed it would be maintained monthly or multiple times a year. I mean, the whole, it's still directly next to this, grass playing field. So whether or not we coordinate with the church to mow the area that needs to be mowed, and then we maintain the actual, trees, that will be, worked out with the church, but it will be maintained. And that's, was a requirement of the original approval.
Okay. So it'd be really great if, so when you say there's a lawn service coming in, of course I get really nervous because I see more damage by lawn services than, well, deer is the worst, but then lawn service people are right up there with the weed whackers, and they're, they come and they destroy everything. So just if you could, really, try to somehow get them not to kill everything, that would be great.
Sure. I mean, it's all grass now, so we would expect to probably use whoever mows it now.
Yeah.
What's
so
that?
Now you have shrubs in the area where they're going to be doing lawn mowing. You just want to make sure that they're not going to be whacking all of the expensive trees.
Sure.
So, okay. That's my questions.
Jim or Carolyn, anything?
I don't have anything at this time.
I don't have anything at this time either.
Okay, I have just a couple of questions. So if I understand it correctly, the slab is going to increase by that percentage that you quoted, and that will only be in that lower left-hand portion. Is that correct?
Correct. The fence line is exactly the same in the back and the sides. It's just this area in here that was added. So it went forward, I think 22 feet, and less than the full width. So correct.
Okay, and the slab as originally designed will not change in its location in any way?
Correct. Yep. The slab that's in the same exact spot. These back corners, this front right corner, the fence gate, everything's in the same exact spot as we previously proposed. There's just a little bit more in this section.
Okay, and I like the idea of the berm. When I was looking at the plans you sent, I was assuming that was a swale, and I was quite concerned about that much digging in that area because of the archaeological risks. So that seems like a good creative solution to me, and I appreciate that. The plantings of the trees and shrubs will now be on top of the berm. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep, they will follow the high point, on each side of the berm. That's what this is showing. They do show the berm in here. This is this is the crest of the berm right in the middle, right, and it goes down on each side. So yeah, and then we did keep the plantings out of the archaeologically sensitive area, which is this black spot, because they obviously get roots and they go down, and this back corner is extremely well screened from anybody as is. So we chose to keep them out of the archaeologically sensitive area. And that's like what you said is correct. We're building up instead of down. We're actually not disturbing any more beneath the surface than what we were proposing to put this berm in. And that's the only additional disturbance, I guess you call it, within this archaeologically sensitive area than what we had proposed previously. And they did allow us, SHPO did confirm that there is non-native soil for the top 18 inches above what's, the archaeologically sensitive area. So they did say we could excavate down to 16 inches below the existing or the current surface without likely impacting any of the archaeologically sensitive area. So we are trying to avoid that as much as possible. But we do have that allowance to dig down that depth. And as part of the approval from SHPO, we have to have an archaeological monitor there, and the tribe, the Native American tribe, is going to be notified to have a member there as well if they'd like to have a member there to monitor it. So if we do dig in there and anything is found, they're gonna know. It's not, it's not like we're just making more of an impact. We're following what was required of us.
So I appreciate your sensitivity to further disturbance in that archaeologically sensitive zone, but I am concerned about the loss of the screening from the view across the river, which is like the Croton train station, the Van Cortlandt Manor, and like the highway. So I don't know which is worse. I don't know. I guess I am concerned about that screening.
I don't know if Gareth, I don't know if you're going to see that project anywhere off the property. It's based off of you can see on the aerial.
Yeah, and those are deciduous trees for the most part. There might be a winter view of it, but maybe on balance, it's better to completely avoid that archaeological zone. So okay. I
don't mind we can add trees in there if you'd prefer it. I think we just thought it would be, we thought it was better to avoid it.
So
could you put like a couple trees, like one on each side of that area, like right by the where the cliff is? Like there's area like where you have IG2, that right where your hand is there, like right up.
Well,
there.
that's we have this 100-foot buffer from the even though it's up 65 feet, it's still a 100-foot horizontal buffer from the wetlands that are down here, which is why we have this hard stop along the edge of.
So you can't plant a tree in that? That seems like something that would be good for the wetland buffer.
We could plant a tree in the buffer.
It's disturbance. It's disturbance per the town code without a wetland permit is not allowed.
Valerie, can you jump in on that? Is that the case?
Well, technically, it would be disturbing the wetlands buffer area.
Planting a tree? I think we've gone crazy.
Well, because if anybody wants to landscape into a wetland buffer area, that's technically disturbance. I don't know.
If that's important to the board, couldn't the board consider issuing a wetland permit for the planting of the tree? If that,
it's certainly within our our purview, I think. Where would you, I mean, since the architectural zone continues into that 100-foot area, I don't know where you'd put the tree where it would have screening value, where it would have screening value, but not be, not affect the archaeological, sorry. Sorry, Donna, what were you saying?
Well, right, yeah, just a little bit like in between the IG and the top of that, like over there somewhere, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that seems like it would be good. So my bigger issue is though that there's a lot of vines and stuff in the trees that are on the slope, and I don't, so we're saying that there's a screening there now. Those vines will eventually kill all those trees and there won't be a screening. So it's, which is really sad because vines can be easily cut. So, I think you should plant a tree and then make sure it doesn't get covered with vines so that we have a future screening.
So, Greg, where you showed the yellow line there, basically skirting the edge of the archaeological zone, could you continue the planting of the line of trees along there if we were willing to give you a wetland planting permit?
It wouldn't be many trees, I don't think, right? There's not much space.
We could. I mean, yeah. I mean, it would be enough to cover your, the end up to the end of the system, approximately. Is it procedural to just say we're issuing a wetland permit? Or is this something that's going to take some time and review?
So you'll need a public hearing, but I think you'll need a public hearing for the site plan amendment as well. So
it won't take any longer.
Right.
You just have to amend your application to also seek a wetland permit.
And for that matter, you could throw in a tree on the other side of it, like Donna mentioned also. Maybe just something next to the final exit point for the water. That would certainly cover it.
Yep. Okay.
Above where you have your cursor there, it looks like there's a lot of space there, but are there trees there already? Do we know if there's trees there already, or is that all grass?
I mean, the whole area is significant fully grown trees. I think, Donna, I think you visited the site with me. It's
yes, that's why I'm wondering
significant
if
vegetation.
Space
everywhere.
in that to plant, because I'm not sure if you're just not showing it on your thing.
Right. It's hard. I mean, it would be great to have that the lines superimposed onto that photograph, that aerial, so we know where it's grass and where it's already wooded.
Yep, that's this right here. This is the tree line right here. So everything on this side is grass. So that's what, this has been surveyed. Those are existing trees. Everything's treed all the way down to the forest. So you got 80 feet of trees, 20 feet of open grass in this 100-foot buffer.
Okay, so to answer Donna's question, you could put some additional trees right up there at the top in that grass zone, right?
In here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
sure.
One tree,
One tree, okay.
But the
all right,
thing is, if you're going to plant these trees, they're going to have to somehow, I mean, if you're going to go through the effort of planting them, they're going to have to be protected from the deer. And if they're not going to be protected from the deer, then it doesn't even make any sense to plant them. So that has to be addressed.
So was that addressed in the protocols, planting protocols in the first round that we approved?
We chose all specific plants per Donna's recommendation that had some deer resistancy, and I think we have put in some sort of mechanism in the approval document to say that they would be, replaced if they got eaten or something along those lines.
Yeah. So the deer are not just, they just don't eat. They also rub against them. I mean, it's this is a real kind of non-populated area. So they're going to, I imagine there's a lot of deer there. I mean, I just can't believe there wouldn't be. So
Sure. There's also a lot of vegetation already there. So I'm like a little, I guess it's
well,
just.
because the trees are big enough. Like, so when they're the little trees, they're perfect for in between their antlers for rubbing, but then when they get big, they don't touch them. So there just has to be some mindfulness of that, or I don't think it's worth going through the trouble of planting them there. So.
Right.
I mean, what would you suggest?
And deer don't read the list. I just want to say, I think I always say that the deer don't read the list. We make the list of things that they don't eat, and then the deer don't read those lists.
So in terms of practicality for this use and the amount of, maintenance that this particular facility requires, which is minimal, what would you suggest, Donna, that they do in order to prevent the deer?
I would just put a cage around it, around
Okay.
the trees. Like just a 4-foot high cage around the trunks, or a tree sleeve or something, like just to keep the deer from rubbing against it. And then there are varieties that they tend not to like. So I would choose those. It's unfortunate because the deer are becoming the primary landscape architects of our area, which because we're only planting things they won't eat. So it's a shame, but there needs to be some kind of fencing around them. And that could be like a little cage, it's like, it doesn't have to be a massive fence. So.
Greg, would you agree to do that for this new planting proposal?
Yeah, we can put little cages around the trees.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. That's fine.
And what about, is it possible to do some vine removal along the edge, perhaps, for some defined distance in, I don't know, say 50 feet in, 100 feet in, vine removal, vine cutting. Doesn't have to be removed, right, Donna? Just cut. Is that right?
Yeah, just you cut it at the lowest point and then 12 inches up, and that's it. But the thing is it's I feel kind of bad putting that on the applicant because the birds are going to come next year and plant those seeds again. So it's like an ongoing thing. So it's it'd be great. It would be great if the property owner would do something.
Right. I was going to say that's probably a property owner situation.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like something.
Okay.
Yeah, this is also a cliff. It's like 60 degrees. It's like steeper than you can walk on. So
yeah,
it's not something that you're gonna be sending people down to clip vines without them being in severe danger, or or destabilizing the cliff. I mean, to a certain extent, you don't want to be doing anything to this cliff.
Well, the vines are probably on the edge anyway because they like the sun. So, but in any case, we don't want to send anybody rappelling down the cliff with cutting tools.
Okay, so Donna, you're all right with leaving the vines to a different party?
Yeah, I don't think it should be their responsibility. It is unfortunate, but I don't think so.
All right. So I mean, speaking for myself, I really support the notion of battery storage. We certainly want to have a design that makes sense not only for now but for anticipated needs for overcoming its aging process. So but at the same time, I think we do need SHPO approval on these new changes. Would you agree with that, Valerie?
Yes, they'll need to provide us, like I said, documentation on the proposed changes, and either that they adhere to what's already been, agreed to with SHPO, or if they need to get, another issuance from SHPO as to the proposed changes that they're okay with.
Okay. So if you're okay with that process, Greg, I think we could move forward.
Yeah, well, I'll get a letter from SHPO. I think it shouldn't be too big of an issue. And then when would the next board meeting that we could get on be if we had that by then?
Well, it's not just that. Valerie, could you say again exactly what we would need from the applicant?
Right, so just, you'll need to take a look at the EAF submission as well as the part 2 and part 3 submissions that you provided us, in terms of the background documents. And then just basically do a comparison of the old project to the new project. And just, if it could be provided in a narrative, that would be great. Just sort of identifying the changes and how that if they are increasing certain thresholds, that they are not having a significant adverse impact to the environment.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's no problem. We do that as well. I guess that won't take us much time, I don't think. So I'm just curious if there's something holding us up from potentially getting public hearing scheduled or something like that to make these updates finalized.
So that I was going to suggest to the board that if you want to call for public hearing, we could probably do that, considering it sounds like there's, the issues that we have outstanding are minor in nature. If you're comfortable with what's being proposed, we could do that.
That'd be great. Everything here is basically an adjustment of the original plan. So that'd be really good if we could do that.
When could that be held, Sandy?
We could do that December 15th.
Okay. I'm good with that too.
Yeah, I mean, SHPO's been very responsive with us on this project since we, started going back and forth. Everything in here does still meet, I know for a fact, meets what they told us were the threshold. So we should have no issue getting that to you by then, and we'll have, the revised documents that Valerie mentioned within the next week for that meeting.
Okay, so Valerie, should we call for a public hearing now for that date?
Yes, for both the site plan approval as well as the wetland permit.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get you the wetland permit application as well, if that is a form or something, or is it something that you issue?
Yes, Sandy you reach out to Sandy and she'll get you whatever all the application that you need to submit.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Do I hear a motion for opening a public hearing for site plan approval and wetland permit approval for the December 15th?
So move.
Second.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we look forward to receiving those materials before that date, and we'll see you on December 17th then, or 15th.
15th, great.
December 15th.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, so I believe we have two board meeting minutes to approve. Why don't we start with October 6th? I hope everyone's had a chance to review it. Do I have a motion to approve the October 6th, 2021 minutes?
So move.
Second.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yeah. Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Do I have a motion to approve the October 20th, 2021 minutes?
So move.
Second.
Jim?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So if there's no new business, I think we could entertain a motion.
Just talk about the possibility of the December 1st meeting. Is there anything for a December 1st meeting?
Sandy?
I don't have anything that I know of. I just wasn't sure if you wanted to have another work session or meeting in between, but if not, we don't have to do it.
If there's nobody trying to get on that agenda, the agenda for that soon, maybe we can skip it.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Sounds good to me. All right.
Since we're talking about this, Sandy and I were discussing the schedules for next year. And initially, I guess a number of years ago, the two meetings came into, I guess the two meetings were established. One was supposed to be for more work session items, and the other one was going to be for more public hearings. And I think over the years, it sort of has blended into, just meeting every other week. And Sandy wanted to sort of get a sense from the board whether you wanted to continue having the two meetings per month or go back to like one meeting per month where you're dealing with your public hearings and the other one work session as needed.
Can't hear you, Donna.
Oh, sounds good to me.
That sounds good to me. As needed. What do you think, Jim?
My only question is is that going to lead to later nights, because we're going to wind up having fuller public hearings on basically once a month, and that's that's a concern. If we're going to have 3 or 4 public hearings on at a time, once a month, is that going to make our nights a lot longer, and how people feel about that?
It's a good point.
Multiple things happening at once. Could we also just have another meeting during the month as needed for that reason also?
We could have a standing work session meeting and then a standing public hearing meeting every month. But if it turns out that there's a lot of applications, you could always, on the work session meeting, adjourn the work session and go into public hearing on those. So you could afford yourself having essentially 2 nights hearings if necessary. But I think it's also good to have a work session night so that you could talk through the projects and just hear from the applicants every time, but to do the work of the board.
I would think we'd leave it alone and have it on the calendar. And if the agenda's light, we could always cancel the meeting. I mean, if there's nothing on the agenda, we've done that before. But I think it's more complicated at trying to add a meeting when we need it than to have it on the calendar and just letting it go if it's light.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for that reason, and for the reason of keeping them shorter and not, really stacking them all. Yeah, why don't we leave it that way? So keep them on the calendar. I agree with that. Everyone good with that? Donna, Jim, Carolyn?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. And Sandy, actually, my wife and I were trying to plan a vacation, and we were wondering when we would know the planned meeting dates for next year.
I will be working on them right away.
Great.
I was hoping to have them ready for tonight, but I will start those.
Excellent. Yeah, we have the Caribbean on our mind, so.
I don't blame you.
Okay, well, do I hear, if there's nothing else, do I hear a motion to adjourn for tonight?
So move.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yes. Thanksgiving, everyone.
Hey, we need the vote.
Yes.
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 Donna?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. I didn't hear a second, though.
Second.
Okay, it's a little out of order, but wanted to be official. Thank you all. Happy Thanksgiving to
Yes,
everyone.
happy Thanksgiving. Take
Happy
care.
Thanksgiving.
Everybody, good night.
Good night.
See you on the 15th.
See you on the 15th.
Very good.